Hello, thanks so much for joining me today. You learned to cast on stitches for knitting in the last video, and today we're going to learn to knit. You can't knit without learning the knit stitch. So here we go. To start knitting, we have cast on our stitches, and we're going to talk a little bit about the needles. The needles are made of two special parts. One is the shaft of the needle, and the other is the tip of the needle. The shaft of the needle determines the size of the stitch, and the tip of the needle is tapered so that it's easier to get that tip into the stitches and make that stitch actually easier to do. There's two ways to hold the yarn in knitting. Two common ways. There are many more, but the main two are English and continental. Both of them, you're going to hold the yarn to the back for the knitting. English, you're going to hold the yarn to the right side with your right hand, and continental, you hold it in your left hand. English being the island of England and continental being the continent of Europe. Neither is wrong or right or better, just different. So when I hold the yarn to the back of the stitches, start by inserting my needle into that first loop. Now you can see where the tip fits down underneath that left needle. You're going to put your needle in, making an X. Wrap your yarn around counterclockwise, over the top and around to the back. That stitch will make its size on that shaft. Now when you slide that needle tip down so that you can get that tip under the left needle and bring that new baby stitch to the front, push the right needle up so that the new stitch is wrapped around the shaft of the needle, making it the correct size. And scooching your stitches to the tip, you can take that first stitch off the left needle. Now, to make a second stitch, we're going to put our needle tip in where it's skinny underneath, make the X, wrap the yarn around, hold on. Let's try one more time. There we go. Hold it. Back that right needle tip down until you can bring it underneath the left needle. Push that right needle into the stitch to make the size and take it off the left needle. Now, this is English style, where the yarn is being held in your right hand. You start the same by putting the needle tip in underneath that left first stitch from front to back. Now, holding onto your yarn, you're going to wrap it all the way around the needle, counterclockwise, so under the needle, over the top, hold on, and you're going to move this a little closer to the tips. Wrap it around, holding it secure. Back the right needle down until you can pass that tip under the left needle. There's your new little stitch. Push your right needle up and make the size correct. And take that stitch off the left needle. Let's do it again. In front to back. Wrap it around counterclockwise. Back your needle dip down until you can bring that under the left needle. Push the right needle in to make size and take it off. Now here's a side-by-side comparison. Again, once you're starting, it doesn't really matter if you're doing continental or English. The point is you find what's comfortable for you to hold the yarn. There are advantages and disadvantages to both. You find what works best for you. Now, once you finish that first row, I want you to move those stitches back away from the tip so when you turn it around, they don't fall off. Now, see how that first stitch is big? That is not unusual. It happens every row to every knitter. Do not, however, try and tighten that stitch up by pulling that yarn up to the top. See, what you've done is where there was one stitch, you're going to go and create two, which is not what you want to do. Okay, that's the wrong thing to do. But once you start knitting, that big loop will go away. Let me show you. So we're going to do one stitch, two stitches, and let's throw a third in there. Now, when you take a look, do you see how that big loop is no longer there? The stitches actually help even that yarn out, and it'll be just fine. So now let's take a look closer at the actual stitches. So when you look at the stitch below the needle, so you have the one on the needle, and then it goes down into this V below. That's a knit stitch. As I looked at the knit stitches even below that, you can see between just below my finger and above my finger, one V on the top goes into that V on the bottom. And that's the knit stitch. I encourage you to practice that, and once you're comfortable, check back in. The next video is how to purl.